This happened about 10 years ago. I grew up in a relatively small house, and for most of my childhood, I shared a bedroom with my older brother. 2 twin beds on opposite sides of the room, 2 dressers and 2 closets. Enough space to survive, but far from comfortable. There wasn't even room for a desk. When my brother left for college, I immediately claimed his bed and the extra space with his permission. Finally, I could have a desk in my room and stop doing homework in the basement or in my dad's office. For 2 years, it worked perfectly, until I went off to college and the room went unused. After graduating, my brother moved back home with a new city job, and unsurprisingly, he retook the bedroom I'd painstakingly arranged. My parents pointed out that I had done the same to him years ago, so it was fair. I couldn't argue. Eventually, I returned home too after starting my own city job. By then, the only available room was the upstairs guest bedroom, half the size of my old room. It was next to my dad's office and directly above the garage, so every time the garage door opened, the whole floor shook for 10 seconds. The room had 2 windows on intersecting walls, one facing the driveway, the other the side of the house. Not ideal, but quiet and private. This particular Friday night, I was home alone. My brother was in Baltimore for a work conference, and my parents were at the family shore house, as they often were on summer weekends. I'd had a grueling day at work, so I decided to stay in, order food, and call it an early night. Around 11:30 p.m., I was lying in bed, trying to unwind with a book, when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of the garage door opening, followed by the familiar vibration of the floor. It took a few seconds for it to register. No one should be home. My parents were at the shore house. My brother was out of town. My heart started racing. I ran to the window, peering into the dark driveway. The garage door was open, but I couldn't see anything clearly. Panic set in. I rummaged through the closet, grabbing one of the old baseball bats my parents had kept, and crept down the stairs, trying to convince myself there was a logical explanation. Maybe the door had glitched. Maybe someone had a reason to be back early. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, faint voices floated from the bedrooms. 2 voices. Clearly not my family. That's when I knew. Someone had broken into the house. I dialed 911 and whispered my address, explaining the situation. The operator instructed me to stay put, to remain hidden. But an overwhelming urge surged through me. I had to act. Against all advice, I crept toward the voices, clutching the bat. As I approached my parents' bedroom, I heard drawers being rifled through. They were looking for valuables. I took a deep breath, summoned my courage, and charged, yelling at the top of my lungs. 2 men were inside, caught completely off guard. I swung at the closer one, hitting his leg. He cursed and fell, hobbling backward. But before I could strike the second, he tackled me. He was bigger and stronger, wrestled the bat from my hands, and started choking me. My hands clawed at his, desperate to break free. Then I saw the first man crawling toward us, a knife glinting in his hand. For a moment, I accepted it. I thought I was going to die in my parents' bedroom. All I could think about was my mother's devastation. Then, faintly, I heard police sirens approaching. The last thing I remember is the second man raising the bat toward my head. Everything went black. I woke to someone shaking me gently. A police officer was kneeling beside me, asking if I was okay. Dazed, I realized the back door was wide open. The intruders had fled when the sirens came. Paramedics checked me over, confirming I was okay. I refused to go to the hospital, though my parents later scolded me for confronting them. Had I hidden, the police might have caught them. The men were never found. My parents installed a full security system after that night, complete with cameras, motion sensors, and alarms. The unsettling part? All doors were locked that night, and the garage door could only be opened with my dad's wireless car button. Whoever broke in knew exactly where it was and knew our schedule. I don't claim that night changed me in some cliché life-altering way, but life before and after accepting you might die are 2 very different things. I'll never forget that dissociating, surreal feeling, thinking my life had ended in my parents' bedroom. Story note 2. This happened about 6 months ago, and I'm still shaken by how calculated and personal the whole thing was. I had recently moved back to my hometown to help care for my aging mother, who lives about 20 minutes away. I found a small duplex that was perfect, close enough to her for emergencies, but far enough that I could have my own space. My mom's health had been declining a bit. Nothing life-threatening, but she'd had a few minor falls and was stubborn about accepting help. I'd been urging her to get a medical alert system, but she insisted she didn't need one, saying I was just being overprotective. It was a constant source of stress, knowing she was alone most of the time. That night, around 9 p.m., I was on the couch watching TV when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a local number I didn't recognize, but since I was new in town, I answered. A woman identified herself as a nurse from a nearby emergency room. She said my mother had been brought in after a fall and hitting her head, and that she was conscious but asking for me. They wanted me to get there quickly. I was horrified. This was the call I'd been dreading. The woman knew my mother's full name, address, and even mentioned her recent hip surgery. I froze for a moment, grabbed my keys, shut the front door, and drove to the hospital, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. At the ER, I told the receptionist what had happened, giving my mother's name. The nurse looked confused and said there was no record of my mother being admitted. I insisted it couldn't be a mistake. I had just received a call from a nurse. They suggested I call my mom directly to confirm. I stepped outside and called her landline. She answered, saying she'd been sleeping and asking why I was calling. Relief and shock hit me simultaneously. Someone had deliberately given me false information to get me out of the house. I raced back home, furious and tense. When I walked in, the front door was just as I'd left it. But the house had been completely ransacked. My TV, laptop, and small jewelry collection were gone. But the thieves hadn't just taken valuables. They had emptied my prescription bottles and removed family photos from their frames. They didn't take the frames, just the photos. Things of huge sentimental value, of little monetary worth. It was calculated, almost sadistic. I called the police and recounted everything, including the phone call. They quickly realized, as I had, that whoever had contacted me knew personal details about my mother and me, information no stranger could have had. I couldn't even think of anyone who might have known so much. The theft itself was bad enough, but the personal targeting was terrifying. It suggested this wasn't just about money. It felt like a long-term plan, maybe identity theft or something requiring personal documents. Over the next few weeks, nothing else happened. I suspect my mother may have inadvertently shared information with someone. She has a wide social circle, and it's easy to see how a stranger could have gathered details. After this incident, she agreed to be more careful with whom she shares personal information. Even now, I can't shake the feeling that someone knows too much about our lives. I recently installed a Ring camera to add some security. Hopefully it's enough of a deterrent, but if anything else happens, I'll be ready to document it.